You've heard of Jack the Ripper, the shadowy figure, the letters, the mystery that never got solved, the killer who became a legend. But here's what they don't teach you in history class. 3 years before Jack the Ripper terrorized London, a killer was already operating in America, targeting women, striking in the dead of night, leaving behind no witnesses, no fingerprints, no name. 8 people were murdered. Dozens more were wounded. The entire city of Austin lived in terror for over a year. And then, he just stopped. To this day, no one knows who he was. This is the story of the servant girl annihilator. Austin, Texas in 1884 was a city on the rise. The state capitol building was being constructed. The population was booming. The governor lived there. Newspapers called it the future of the South. But beneath that surface, there was a brutal reality. Racial segregation was absolute. Black domestic workers, mostly women, lived in small cabins behind the homes of their white employers. And under the racial order of Reconstruction-era Texas, they were isolated, vulnerable, no political power, largely invisible to the justice system. The killer understood this. Whoever he was, he chose his targets carefully, and the city would spend the better part of a year pretending not to notice. On the night of December 30th, 1884, a cook named Molly Smith was dragged from her bed by an unknown attacker. Her body was found the next morning in the backyard, her skull nearly split open with an axe. Her partner, Walter Spencer, was found nearby, badly wounded but alive. Police investigated, found nothing, called it a tragedy, moved on. Molly Smith was a servant, and servants, it seemed, were a problem the city could afford to set aside. They would soon regret that. Over the following months, the attacks continued, one after another. Eliza Shelley attacked in her cabin in May. She survived, barely. Irene Cross, struck down weeks later. Rebecca Ramey and her 11-year-old daughter Mary attacked on the same night in the same cabin, within feet of each other. Each attack followed the same pattern. Late at night, a servant cabin, an axe, a knife, or a large iron spike. Extreme violence. And then he vanished. No footprints, no witnesses who survived, no screams heard until it was too late. The press gave him a name. Even now, that name is disturbing, not because of what it says about the killer, but because of what it says about the city. These women weren't being called victims. They were being called servants first. Their deaths were defined by their labor, not their lives. That tells you everything about who Austin was willing to protect in 1884. By spring of 1885, Austin's official position was something between denial and embarrassment. The police had made arrests, released people, made more arrests, released more people. No charges, no conviction, no explanation. And the killings didn't stop. In May 1885, a woman named Gracie Vance was attacked and killed. Her partner, Orange Washington, was murdered alongside her. One of the few male victims in this entire series. Same method, same silence afterward. For over a year, this killer had operated in the servant quarters, in the back cabins, in the invisible part of Austin. But December 24th, on Christmas Eve, 1885, he walked into the main house. Susan Hancock and Eula Phillips, both white women, both from prominent Austin families, were attacked in their own homes. Their husbands were found wounded beside them. The city of Austin exploded. Suddenly, this was a crisis. Suddenly, this was front-page news that demanded answers. The governor demanded immediate action. This wasn't just a problem for the servant quarters. This was a threat to everyone. Hundreds of suspects were arrested and interrogated, nearly all of them black men, picked up on suspicion alone. The actual police were at loss. Criminology as we know it didn't exist. There was no FBI, no forensic science, no blood spatter analysis. no psychological profiling. They didn't even have the concept of a serial killer. That term wouldn't exist for another century. They were hunting a ghost using tools that weren't built for this. So they did what institutions do when they're overwhelmed and under pressure. They looked for someone easy to blame. A man named Nathan Elgin was a young black man who walked with a limp from a foot injury. Someone decided that limp made him look suspicious. A mob took him out before any trial could happen. He had no connection to any of the murders, none. An innocent man was murdered in the shadow of these murders. That is how desperate and vicious this situation had become. The system didn't just fail to protect the victims, it consumed another innocent life while looking for someone to punish. Here is the thing that is disturbing, and that we should sit with for a moment. Molly Smith had been murdered 13 months earlier. So had Eliza Shelley, Irene Cross, Rebecca Ramey, Mary Ramey, Gracie Vance. Months of murders, months of terror in those back cabins. The city only called it a crisis when it reached the front of the house. Over the decades since 1885, researchers and historians have put forward several theories about who the servant girl annihilator really was. None have been proven. All of them are haunting. A man known in the records only as Maurice, a cook who worked near several of the crime scenes. He reportedly disappeared from Austin shortly after the final murders in December 1885. Some researchers believe he fled because he knew he'd be blamed, innocent or not. In 1885 Austin, being a black man in the wrong place was enough to get you killed. Others think his disappearance is more significant than that. There is no definitive evidence either way. A transient laborer, someone who moved between households, doing seasonal work. This theory holds that the killer was someone trusted enough to enter these cabins without raising alarm. Someone who knew the rhythms of servant life from the inside. The attacks show a deep familiarity with how these cabins were laid out, when people slept, and how to enter without waking anyone until it was too late. That doesn't happen by accident. Alec Muir, a man who some researchers believe later traveled to London and may have become Jack the Ripper. 3 years after the servant girl annihilator went silent in Austin, Jack the Ripper began his murders in London's East End. The similarities are uncomfortable to look at directly. Both killers targeted vulnerable women, both operated at night, both used extreme violence with bladed or blunt instruments, both were never identified, both simply stopped. And in both cities, the victims who attracted the least official concern were the ones attacked first. The theory connecting Austin to Whitechapel has been explored by multiple researchers over the years. There is no definitive proof. The timing fits. The methodology fits. The psychology fits. Is it true? Nobody knows. There's no definitive proof either way, but the connection is haunting enough that it's never fully gone away. This case is often framed as a mystery, a whodunit, a historical curiosity with a tantalizing Jack the Ripper footnote. And that framing is not wrong. The mystery is real, and it's genuinely unsolved. But if you let the mystery become the whole story, you miss what this case is actually about. Molly Smith was murdered on December 30th, 1884. The city had over a year to take that seriously. They didn't, not until the victims looked like the people in power. That's not a 19th century problem. That's a recurring one. The cases that get resources, attention, and urgency are not always the cases that need them most. They're the cases involving people the system already values. In 1884, that meant wealthy white women. Molly Smith had to wait 13 months just to have her murder called a crisis. These people deserved justice. They were let down by the police, by the city, and by a society that had decided in advance how much their lives were worth. The servant girl annihilator killed at least 8 people, wounded dozens more, terrorized an entire city for over a year, and walked away free. He may have gone on to kill again, possibly on the other side of the world, or he may have simply faded back into ordinary life, living out his days in anonymity, his secret buried with him. We will probably never know. And that's what makes this one of the most chilling cases in American history. If this story stayed with you, subscribe. I cover cases like this every week, the ones that history almost forgot, the ones that deserve to be remembered. And drop a comment. Do you think the Servant Girl Annihilator and Jack the Ripper were the same person? Let me know what you think. See you in the next one. Have a blessed week.